The OBS Studio Masterclass or full course is what we're continuing today. If you haven't seen previous videos on the series, I urge you to go watch them. Last video, we covered every single OBS source, what they do, useful cases, and a couple of tips here and there. Today, we're going to be covering every single filter. Now, a filter can be applied to any type of source. It's really important for you to understand that it applies to any type of source. So an image, a video, text, anything. And it allows you to modify or add an effect, a filter, a modifier to whatever you're adding it to. For example, there's a filter for removing green from your green screen, making it transparent. There's also a filter to handle your colors, to shift the hue, etc. So let's get started. This is every single filter in OBS Studio and what they do. Now, you can add filters to a source by right-clicking and clicking on filters, or simply by clicking on the source and looking at the utility bar right here. And this dialog box will open. You can add a new filter by clicking on the plus. You can name the filters that you add, like so. You can delete filters by clicking on the trash bin, and then you can move them up and down with those arrows. Because yes, the order matters. Now, the very first filter we have here, I will be testing with my webcam because it is apply LUT, or lookup tables are basically filters that you can apply to images or video to play around with the colors. Think your typical Instagram filter or your VS Code filters. But the thing is, you need some LUT files that you can find on the internet or create your own depending on what software you're using. But it's kind of a problem. If you're a beginner, you probably don't have your own library of a bunch of LUTs. If you're doing this for the first time, OBS actually provides a couple of them. You'll see some .cube files, you see some .png files. For example, let me go posterize, and you can see the effect that it has right now. Those are the ones that OBS provides. And then you can play with the amount that it affects it. Probably should have kept the posterize to see that. So if I lower the amount, you can see I slowly blend into the original like that. This is red isolated, and you can see the reds are the only thing that you're going to be able to see. Wow. But I'm going to give you a sneak peek of what an actual LUT library would look like. I have this pack that has a couple of like film LUTs. For example, Stranger Things here gives me some very, very harsh colors. Blade Runner. And you can see the contrast, certain colors will be isolated and manipulated differently. Mad Max, there you go. You see how bright the oranges get. Wonder Woman, Matrix, and then we have Matrix V2. So it really depends on what you want. But sometimes it's a pretty cool way to give your webcam like a cinematic-ish look. The second filter we will see is Chroma key, and this one is literally purpose-built for green screening. That being said, you'll see the options or color key type, green, blue, magenta, and then custom color. Then you have similarity. So if you had like a little bit of spill around him, for example, like that, you can play with the similarity to kind of clean it up. And it's basically adding colors that are closer to green, that are similar to green until you get the desired key that you want. There's also smoothness. This will smooth out the outline, if you will, so you don't get things that are too jagged, especially if your image is pixelated. Then you have color spill reduction. That is, if your green is really bleeding into your subject, then you can really do that. And it basically lowers the saturation on the outside unless you push it that much. Then after that, you have a couple of options that are more like color correction, opacity, contrast, brightness, and gamma. Next up is the color correction filter, which you can probably tell I really, really love. You get the gamma, contrast, brightness, and then you get saturation. Of course, if you want to be super saturated, you also get hue shift, which I really love to play with. If you have an overlay, for example, you download an overlay, and I demonstrated that in the previous videos already. But let's say you download this overlay and it's orange, for example, and you would really like it in blue. Well, what you can do is go in there, add a color correction filter, and then play around with the hue. Now, this doesn't work as well if it has a bunch of colors, but this is single color, so boom, just like that, you have your blue overlay. And remember that filter is applied to every single source. So if you have text, that's a color. If you have a browser source, that's a color. Anything, so alerts, all that. Every time I make an overlay, I always get comments that are like, oh, I wish it was red, I wish it was green. And I'm like, if you knew basic OBS, you would know that that's not a problem. I purposely make my overlays one single color so that you can choose the color you want. Anyway, next filter is color key. Now, this used to be a little bit different than Chroma key. It used to give you more freedom when it comes to picking the color. But right now, it's pretty much the exact same thing as Chroma key. I use this if I want to key out a different color. I go to custom color. I go select color, then click pick screen color, and then I'll click on the color that I want to replace. Boom, click OK, boom. And now I can play with the similarity. You can see I still have some orange in there. If I bump this up, it's going to remove until there's no orange left. Let's keep it around like this. And you can see we don't have the color spill option. We do have the smoothness. You can really see how smooth it makes it. Applying a little bit of feather, then opacity, contrast, blah, blah, blah. And let's say I wanted to add my own color now. I could add a color source and then pick whatever color I want, like this one. Make that big, and then drag it all the way down behind our image, just like that. Now I have 2 layers, but now I can dynamically change the color of my entire overlay. And if I use some external software, I can maybe let chat decide which color my overlay will be. I'm going to add my webcam for this next one. And the next filter is crop/pad. Now, I think I previously showed you that you can crop images by holding Alt on your keyboard. By images, I mean sources. So if I hold Alt here and I go on the handle and I click and drag, you can see I'm cropping this, right? So why would a filter be useful? Let's click on it and look at the images. This is useful because you have data. You can crop a specific amount of pixels. Let's go 500. There you go. And it doesn't do the little dot thing. That means that if I apply a filter on it afterwards, it will take the crop into account. It's hard to demonstrate without showing you every single filter, but basically if you crop manually like I showed before, and then you add like a filter that would have to do with the transparency or the alpha, the outline of the image, it won't take it into account. You will crop into that filter. But if you have a crop filter, like we have here, now if I had something that's supposed to, I don't know, round the corners, it will take that into account. That's the only use, honestly. Also keep in mind that having filters do certain actions with data like this means that this can be controlled, and later on, I don't want to spoil everything, but later on this can be animated. So maybe you have like a channel point or something like that that basically changes the shape of your webcam dynamically because it's like a modifier, it's a filter. Next filter we have is HDR Tone Mapping Override. So OBS already does HDR to SDR, as it probably says here. So if you have an HDR source, like a camera or a monitor, you can basically convert it to SDR with a lot of control. Me personally, never use that, and it doesn't have any effect on SDR sources like we have here. So this is like the extent of my knowledge on this. But as I said before, since OBS already does HDR to SDR, usually you go in the properties and you manage the colors there. All right, so next one is image mask/blend. And this is one of my favorite ones, or it used to be before I discovered plugins. And this allows you to do masks, okay? So it allows you to input an image that will determine which pixels are going to be transparent and which ones are not. Meaning that you can create any shape you want, any overlay, just artistically apply transparency to a source. Now there are multiple types of mask, but alpha mask is usually what we do. And you can see that it asks you to go and find an image. What we can do is create one right now. And this is a good way to learn how, like, you know, since OBS is giving you rectangle sources, how would you go about making a circle source? Like circle here, this is MS Paint. I'm going to select circle and then white. I'm also going to make sure that it fills. Where is that? Right there, solid fill. And then I'm just going to click somewhere up here. I'm going to hold shift to get a perfect circle. And I'm just going to drag that right there. I don't know why it didn't actually fill it, but that's fine. I'm just going to try to move this towards the middle. Press enter, and then I'm gonna go find my bucket fill tool, click once, there you go, and we're gonna save this. Once I have this saved, I can go back into OBS and use it as an image mask. Double click, and there you have it. It is that simple to make a circular mask. Now, later on with plugins, there are plugins that make this a little easier, but if you're starting off raw, you don't know anything about plugins yet, you don't want to add more stuff to your OBS, OBS Vanilla allows you to have any shape of webcam. So yes, that means that any color between black and white, so black hides, white reveals, any color in between is going to be levels of transparency. So do with that what you will. Next filter is one that I pretty much never used. It's Luma key. Now the difference between an image mask blend and a Luma key, it's kind of like the color key. Instead of removing a color, it removes bright areas, right? So if we start bringing this down, it's gonna find the brightest area of my image and it's going to key that out, okay? And then from there, you can see we have pretty jagged edges. I can make that smoother with a little bit of feathering. And then there's Luma minimum, where you can bring that up. So if instead of having a green screen, you basically had a really white wall and your face was pretty much in contrast and you look kind of like a silhouette, you could use your white wall as a green screen pretty much. So this can be useful if you're downloading YouTube videos, for example, that would have like maybe lighting effects. You can remove the bright parts and then add whatever you want underneath it because it becomes transparent. It's pretty useful, but I never had any use for it personally. All right, next one is render delay, and it just like the name sounds, it adds a delay. Now this is useful for what? Because sometimes you get a microphone and you're running it through a bunch of software, which makes your audio come in pretty late, which means that your mic and your camera are going to be out of sync. This could be one way of getting your camera to be in sync. Sometimes you buy a cheap capture card to play your video games, and same thing, your mic, your camera, and your audio is not in sync with the gameplay. You want to fix that, you add a little bit of delay. So let me add like a good 500 milliseconds, and now I'm completely out of sync, as you can probably tell. And yeah, it's pretty cool. Can be very useful, can be a lifesaver sometimes. Next filter we have is scaling / aspect ratio. And this basically gives you access to the typical algorithms for scaling. You have point, bilinear, bicubic, length source, and area. If you don't know what that means, that's completely fine. You probably won't be using this. But it's basically how it will preserve the pixels when you're scaling your sources around. Your second option is resolution. So if you want to, let's say, scale this webcam to the canvas resolution, I can click on it and you can see it scales it. And then on top, I can pick, what type of algorithm it uses to play around with the pixels. Some of them are going to be less sharp. Some of them are going to be way sharper. It's just something that, like, if you know about it, then it's like an easy thing. So I would mostly use this for video. I wouldn't use it, first of all, but you can use it for video captures. So webcams, of course, and capture cards. If your capture card resolution is lower than your base canvas and you're going to have to scale it, don't just scale it and make it blurry. You can use this instead. I haven't tested it enough to tell you if there's a huge difference or not. Sometimes I just add like a Sharpen filter, which we're gonna see later on. But right before that, we have the scroll filter. And this one, I'm not gonna lie, this one I use for showing labels bars. So I would easily put the name of my most recent follower, my most recent subscriber, etc. And then I would just change the horizontal speed and make it scroll. I think I showed that in my latest video when I was showing the text. I did. So if you want to make something scroll, you can do that. You can also create a pretty big image because you can limit the width. So what you can do is have a large image that is scrolling, but since you limit the width by doing this, for example, it's basically, it's revealing more and more before it eventually loops back in. This could be a way of showing like your sponsors, your socials, maybe if you have merch, etc. But yeah, I've never used it like that, but I mostly use it for the labels and when I want to just mess around and create some sort of psychedelic effect. But yeah, that was the scroll filter. And finally, we have the Sharpen filter that I was talking about. If we add that, we can sharpen the image. This basic Sharpen filter that you can find on any editing software. This one is pretty clean. You don't have the threshold plus amount, you just have the sharpness. And I believe it is only on a single pixel amount, basically. So it's not gonna be a huge area of being sharpened. You can see that it's very tiny. It's not bad though. It's not bad. Sometimes I add like a little hint of it, especially when I'm using a DSLR or a very high quality camera that tends to be softer than what people expect. Especially if I'm shooting on 60 FPS, they want the whole thing to be sharp, and it helps it be smoother a little bit. And just like that, we just checked out every single filter in OBS Studio Vanilla. Now, those were visual filters. Yes, I am aware of audio filters, which we will see in maybe the next video actually, but I believe this is a good start. Once we get into the plugin section, we will see that adding plugins to your OBS will give you more filters. So your list will be bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. In fact, let me show you my main computer's list that actually looks like. Those are all the filters I currently have on my main PC, the one I'm using to record this, okay? The other one was my laptop, the one I use for tutorials. And yeah, so please stick around. I'm telling you, this is a beginner to expert. Once you reach the expert level, you're gonna have like 3D effect and 3D block and 3D panel. That's not even written in English. That's how advanced it is. We got glow, we got freeze, we got face tracker. So make sure you subscribe, okay? Before I go, I would like to shout out my members, especially the brand new ones. The Gun Artist, I see you. Dodgeboy for Life, I see you. Charities for 11 World, thank you so much for rejoining. Bianca M, 9218, thank you for joining. Dogman Morgan with the Hero tier, thank you so much for rejoining. Dakota Miskis, Nella Davis, 6-Speed Steve, Classic J, and Fixie Bluey. You probably noticed that there's more and more members-only content, and I'm still working on that to bring you even more. That's it. Bye-bye.